What do elite leaders and professional rodeo athletes have in common? More than you think. Today, I'm sitting down with Mike McCartney, a former professional rodeo cowboy turned leadership expert who helps high performing leaders unlock their full potential. Mike shares the tough lessons from the arena that shaped his coaching philosophy. He also shares three core responsibilities every leader must master and why leadership isn't about title, it's about influence. We'll also tackle the biggest leadership challenges, from balancing results and relationships to making tough calls under pressure. So if you're ready to ride through uncertainty, build resilience, and lead with impact, you won't want to miss this one. So saddle up and let's dive in. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. You've worked with many Fortune 500 executives, you worked with family businesses, and everything in between. What's a common leadership challenge you see across the board?
I think one of the most common things that I've encountered, and talking with my peers, it's the same thing. It's the difficulty to get good feedback on oneself. So for the leader, there's all kinds of obstacles they have to overcome to get people to give them good feedback, especially if it's a direct report relationship. But to get good feedback on yourself about how you come across, how you interact, to get people to tell you the things that most people wouldn't tell you for all kinds of practical reasons, I think is the biggest challenge for any executive. Also, just to be truly, genuinely humble and overcoming the difficulty of getting good feedback on yourself has a lot to do with humility. It's very interconnected.
How has the lessons from the rodeo arena shaped the coaching style and leadership philosophy that you have?
Couple of ways. Number one, I think first and foremost, it's the mental preparation, envisioning. Today we would call it positive psychology, but envisioning a positive outcome in my coaching engagements. But also for me, it's been another benefit of my rodeo background that I draw upon is the ability not only to envision a positive outcome, but to push myself physically. In the sport of rodeo, you're going to get hurt. Injuries are just commonplace. But how you bounce back from those and the ability to be able to push through physically when there's pain or lack of sleep in order to get something done it gives me great confidence. My background in rodeo gives me a lot of confidence about a good outcome.
Like you said, rodeo really taught you resilience, focus, the importance of preparation, qualities that I'm sure you emphasize in your coaching to help leaders navigate challenges as well.
Exactly. And it makes me realize, like in rodeo, I am actually partnering with the bull or the bronc that I am riding. And so I try not to think of it as necessarily a conflict between me and the animal, but truly a partnership. I'm working together with this animal that both of us have a good outcome.
I love that partnership approach and not looking at it as more of an adversarial approach. And that really draws a lot of links into corporate America as well, right? I mean, with coaches and with leaders thinking themselves as being a partner-led organization, and partnership really is the new leadership, because leadership is no longer about titles. It's really about influence. What's one of the first things a leader should do to earn respect and authority without relying on their position?
I think that one of the first things a leader needs to do is, in the practical sense, just be humble. Okay. And how do you be humble? You listen, you show respect, you trust people. And those things just are so endearing, no matter what kind of people respect a humble leader. They admire it. You're endeared to it. It draws people to you. And to show respect, and one way we show respect is by listening to people, empowering people. those things just have a significant impact on getting people to follow you and binding trust.
And emphasizing influence over titles really leads us to consider the core responsibilities leaders must prioritize. And you say leaders have three core responsibilities: hitting targets, uplifting their teams, and committing to their own growth. So if a leader is struggling, which one should they focus on first?
As a leader, as an executive, you got to hit the numbers. If you don't hit the numbers, you have no credibility, you have no competence. People expect that. But I think, and Marshall writes about this profusely in various articles, to listen to people shows respect. And then you, as the leader, learn a great deal. And again, to get good feedback on yourself. So in prioritizing, I would say just work on humility. How do you be humble? You ask good questions. You try to learn from people. You don't say the I word very often. It's we. Just some of those little nuances I think people pick up on.
Well, and I love Marshall's approach, that stakeholder-centered coaching. So maybe unpack that a little bit more, because you're right. Everyone's gotten 360 to death. But having that stakeholder approach coaching and building that assessment from people above you, below you, at your same level really is insightful for the executive coach to make sure they're getting an accurate picture of how they're perceived within the organization.
I think there are three key things that make stakeholder centered coaching special. That is Marshall's approach. Number one is the involvement of stakeholders, people that that are going to tell you the truth, that will level with you, they'll give it to you straight, and the leader seeking that. It's not on the stakeholder to come to you, it's on the leader to seek the feedback of the stakeholder. That's really important. Number two, it is you got to have a goal. We got to have a goal, and where does that goal come from? Sometimes the leader will know what they need to strengthen, but often it's best if it comes from the people around them, the people who truly know this leader well, because you don't want the leader working on something only for the leader to find out months later, oh, that isn't really what we think you needed to work on. And Marshall talks about that. So I think to ask people to seek feedback on what it is you need to strengthen to be an even better leader, no matter how good you already are.
You're right. And many great leaders, they're feedback junkies. They want the feedback. However, I've noticed too that many leaders say they want the feedback, but they struggle when they actually receive it. What is one simple shift that makes feedback easier to hear and act upon?
Yeah, and this is very integral with stakeholder-centered coaching, because the leader is following up every month with their stakeholders for feedback. And how do they overcome those obstacles? I think there's a couple of things. Number one, they practice at just saying thank you. No matter what they get, it's just thank you. And in the beginning, if you press too hard for examples, that could sound like you're demanding proof and you're incredulous. So just whatever you get, say thank you. And then to practice that. And then when people see that you are actually using some of that feedback, that just skyrockets the trust and the credibility that you as a leader will have with your people when they see you using what they suggested. And sometimes it may not always be usable, but most of the time, if you look for a way, you can incorporate it and you can find a way to use it in your action plan.
When viewing feedback as an opportunity for growth, and criticism also helps leaders embrace it and act on it constructively. Because I remember what other leaders have told me too. It's you can say thank you. It doesn't mean that you're going to act on everything, but at least you're receptive to that feedback, and you can say something like, "I'll consider it."
Very good. And if I said to you, Charles, I got some feedback for you. What does it sound like? Something negative, right? It's like, Marshall coined the term feed forward. And it's a bit of a play on words, but I think it's an apt play on words, because it really is more descriptive about what can I do going forward? Feedback is about something that's already happened. I can't change that. But what suggestions do you have for me to be better next month or tomorrow, whatever it is? So to seek that feedback, and then when they see you, and just to say thank you in and of itself and then all of a sudden people are going, oh, that wasn't very hard. I didn't get any pushback. He just said thank you. That may be the first change people notice. It's like, whoa, the last time I gave this guy some feedback, I got all kinds of questions and pushback. And this time he just said, thank you. I'll do that again. The only reason I steer clear of the term advice, because there's some adages about advice is what you pay for it. So I have found that the Marshall's coined term of feed forward tends to be sticky. It's a little new, it's a little different, and people like it and they use it because it's very descriptive. And they go, oh, I can do that. Do you have any suggestions for me? I mean, that's just a synonym for feed forward, but people tend to like that. And they remember it, and it's just aptly descriptive, I think.
When embracing feedback really also opens the doors to involving others in one's development journey. And you say leaders need to involve others in their own development, which is kind of counterintuitive because most people think that leadership growth is a personal journey. Why is this perspective shift so important?
Leadership development is a personal journey, no doubt about that. But I think it is a bit counterintuitive to involve others because iron sharpens iron. You want to be a better athlete? You practice with really good athletes. You want to be a better musician, better student, whatever it is, you engage the people around. We tend to perform at a level of those that we are close to, that we work with. So you want to be better at anything, engage people, as we're told, to hire, maybe better than we are, smarter than we are. People that truly have your interest at stake. They have a stake in your success. That's why the Marshall Goldsmith Stakeholder-Centered coaching is so effective. It engages the people around you, involves them to be a part of your leadership journey, which really shouldn't be a solo journey. In fact, in our approach with stakeholder-centered coaching, not only will the leader get better, but everybody involved should be getting better. In fact, that's one of the commitments I have my stakeholders agree to, that they're going to work on their own development. I want them to learn as much from the leader and me as coach about the process of how to get better as a leader.
And I'm sure you saw this in your rodeo days where for leadership growth, I mean, you involved others in that approach to become better at what you're doing. It's not just more practice and more reps, but also getting different perspectives and having people really buy into your journey, becoming better at those events in that arena so that you could improve faster than what you could on your own.
Practically, when you just look at anybody who is any elite athlete, you got to have a training partner, somebody working with you, somebody that can challenge you, that can support you, but also just help you raise the bar, whatever you're doing. And I think when we look at this as a partnership, and that's why it's so important that the stakeholders themselves in the Marshall Goldsmith Stakeholder-Centered approach are active participants. They will get better by their involvement. Iron sharpens iron. I mean, that's thousands of years old. It's a great proverb, and it's so applicable and relevant today.
When engaging others in personal development enhances influence and connection within teams, some leaders, many leaders, I would say, struggle to get buy-in from their teams. What's the secret to getting people to want to follow you? Because it's different than your title, right? You can have that title. It doesn't mean you have influence or people that want to follow you.
One of the most important things we can do is model humility and trust people, because that in and of itself is empowering. And when you show respect for people, when you trust people, when you treat them and empower them with opportunities to make meaningful, weighty decisions, they're involved now. And we tend to work harder for things we're involved with than being told what to do.
Talk to me a little bit more about authenticity and how to build trust, because that's really that foundation. If you want people to trust you, and you be able to give feedback to them, that trust has to be established first. What are some of the first steps in building that trust if you have a new team?
I think one of the most important things for a leader to do is truly to ask that very question. How can I build trust with you? What would you need to see me do, hear me say, results we need to get to strengthen our trust? And then to truly model that, and then sometimes maybe make people aware of it and just give it voice, like, this is what we said we needed to do. How did we do? There's an exercise we have learned that we draw from in stakeholder-centered coaching from the military. It's called, anybody that's been in the military, Charles, I don't know if you were, it's called an after action review, an AAR. And it basically just mines learning. And it asks it's a framework basically of 4 questions. I use a little acronym in my own head that helps me remember what those questions are. But what was the goal? What was the outcome? What did we learn? What will we do better next time? I call it mine the gold. So when we review those sessions with a team, okay, what was the goal? What was the outcome? What did we learn? And what we're going to do better next time? It helps cement the learning, anchor the learning with the team. And I think we increase our chances for better outcomes next time.
And I think there's not enough that passes through that filter to say, hey, the military is an agile organization. They've been doing this for decades. Let's hopefully learn some of those best practices so we can use that in the corporate environment.
Well said. The military has been an awesome leadership institution. There is so much to mine from what the military has taught us about how to develop leaders. There's a lot at stake when a leader through the military when we shape those. I will never forget, I had the chance to be in a small group lecture with a former general who was at one point in charge of all training worldwide for the military. And I asked him about the AAR. I'd just come out of a Marshall talk, and Marshall was talking about the importance of the AAR, and I had already been using it in my coaching. And I asked this gentleman, this former general, and he was an animated guy, but he hit another level of enthusiasm. It was like, the AAR, are you kidding me? Everything we do is based on what we learn through AARs. It is so important to the military. And I thought, it's just a good framework for how we learn. I can remember using it with my kids. I'm a father of 7 children. And as they grew up, often I would just kind of run through that AAR in my head with them because I wanted it coming out of their mouth, not mine, about what they learned. I can tell them ad nauseum what they should learn, but when they start telling me, oh, here's what I learned, Dad, or an employee, here's what I learned, that just, when it comes out of their mouth, they'll remember it so much better than when we just tell them.
When another characteristic of great leaders is really demonstrating genuine care for their team and their employees, which inspires others to follow them willingly. What are some good strategies for leaders to employ to be more empathetic and to really kind of connect on a deeper level with their employees? Because today, a lot of employees want that connection. They feel more isolated, more alone. There's a loneliness pandemic. So what are some of the ways that really leaders can build this community and show this genuine care?
Singularly, I think one of the most effective ways a leader can demonstrate that kind of authenticity and integrity is through good listening. You become a good listener, and that affects many things. So often that is something very specifically, one of the goals I often work on with my clients is just listen better. And if that isn't the goal in and of itself, it's usually connected to that goal. Because when you listen, you learn. And every leader should be learning. but you also are showing respect for the individual, which builds continued trust.
Well, let's move into more leadership under pressure, and conflict is inevitable. What is your go to strategy for turning a heated disagreement into a productive conversation?
Make them feel like you understand. And that's not saying, I understand. In fact, that's probably the worst thing you could say, but truly just give them your attention, paraphrase periodically, just exercise good listening skills. And that shows respect and that, oh my gosh. And then you learn so much from that about the individual. They feel respected. And you, as the leader, are learning what you can do to help improve the situation.
I love that focus on active listening, acknowledging differing viewpoints, and guiding the discussion toward common goals. And managing conflicts effectively is crucial, especially under pressure. Love to get more of your background as a professional rodeo athlete because it's so unique in the leadership space. What are some of the biggest leadership lessons that you've learned from the rodeo arena that you can apply to the boardroom?
For me, one of the biggest things I've learned is just the importance of mental preparation before a meeting, before a client call, a client meeting, is just to review what that positive outcome needs to be and what are some practical steps to get there. So I have a little action plan that I share with all my clients at the very beginning of an engagement. And it's basically, these are the behaviors that you can expect of me as a coach. These are my commitments to you. And there's a lot of things in there that are about listening. Like, number one, I'm not going to tell you anything. I will offer suggestions, but I'm going to listen like you're the only person in the room. And then I'm going to ask some incisive questions that hopefully help you explore the issue bigger than you would have on your own. But what's important is that you arrive at some of your own thoughts, because when they're yours, you tend not to argue with them. I don't want you to go trying something and have it fail and go, well, that's just what my coach did, and you were never committed in the first place. I want you thinking of this on your own. If I can help you think through and generate new solutions, better ideas, then I've done my job.
I love that. And I also know I've seen my fair share of rodeos, and the other critical skill that I think that the best rodeo athletes have is staying calm under pressure. Because when you're on the back of a bull or a bronco, the pressure can get to you and anxiety can creep in. So you have to have that ability to make those quick, informed decisions. And that's a lesson that I think directly ties from rodeo right to leadership. How did you overcome that and really get better at staying calm under pressure?
Yeah, oh, Charles, so many stories on that one, but I think it's just a lot of reps, a lot of practice. There were times when I was rodeoing and I'd see the guy ahead of me get hurt badly, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm on a worse bull or bronc than he is, that he just got hurt by. And then I would just say, it's that mental preparation. Get that out of my head. Think, I got an action plan. I'm running that through. I just got to stick to the fundamentals. I know how to get a positive outcome here. I want to be successful in this ride. I want to win, and I want to walk away from it in one piece.
Well, and in many cases, right, too, it's a lot of it's mental because when you're there in the stall getting ready for the ride, the physical preparation and all of that is done. But really getting your mind in the right state, like with what leaders need when they go into a difficult conversation, talk with a difficult individual. You put in the time, you put in the preparation, and you want to make sure that mentally you're prepared and you're ready and you're in that confident, calm state, which for a lot of leaders, that's tough to do. Like you said, unless they have the reps and they've done it enough, but I would argue a lot of leaders don't do that enough. Is there any mantra, affirmation, or mental process that you go through in preparing just to say, okay, it's 30 seconds before I give this big presentation. Let me focus on my breathing or something like that.
I think you want to control as much of the physical surroundings that you can. But what you just said right there is just, I want to envision some of the things that could go wrong so I know what I got to do. So mentally, before I would ride, I would prepare myself for what that bull or bronc was going to do. But sometimes it changes. The chute gate opens and he's got a different idea. It's like, oh, he wasn't supposed to go to the left. I was prepared for him to go to the right, but he goes to the left. So I've got to be able to ride. In rodeo, we talk about that, taking him jump for jump. And so sometimes you get into a conversation, even if you think you're prepared for it, this is where you draw upon a lot of previous learning, because it may not always go. He may say the client may say something totally different, or in a presentation, it's like, whoa, I didn't expect the audience to do that. Now what do I do? That's why I just want to have done my positive training, my positive mental imaging to envision a positive outcome. And if I stick to those basics, it works out.
Well, another thing you said too is being agile. Leaders need to be agile. You need to be agile when you're on the back of that bull, because you'd have no idea. Like you said, he was supposed to go left, he went right. So you're constantly course correcting in the moment, which a lot of leaders need to do in this environment as well, because the future is so uncertain. With everything going on right now, especially, so they need to be able to see around corners and have that agile approach, so they're not fixated or stuck in old ways of thinking.
Yes, and that's where I talk about where I mean by just over time, with a lot of reps, you get some confidence that knowing no matter what kind of things may occur extemporaneously, I can be ready. I can adapt in the moment. I can be agile. I thought the bull was going to go left. He went right. Okay. There's a lot of different little adjustments I got to make, but over time you say, I can do those. And even in your head, as you're preparing, you just know that I no matter how prepared I think I am, I have to be prepared for the unexpected, because bulls, they do things they want to do.
Do you get much preparation on riding that same bull, or watching video of the bull prior to, so you kind of know their natural tendencies?
Well, today, back when I was rodeoing, I mean, we didn't have videos like they do today, or we didn't have cell phones, but there was a lot of, you would just ask guys, hey, what's this bull do? And you, to a certain extent, you had to trust that they were telling you was true. Oh, he always goes to the left. Well, sure enough, one time he goes to the right, and a guy go, I never saw him do that. Well, maybe he did or didn't. You don't know. But that's why I mean, it's just those reps in the moment. You got to be prepared to take it jump for jump. You get into a difficult conversation with a client and you didn't expect them to do this. You got a savvy that you draw from just with a lot of reps. Call it competence. It ain't your first rodeo that you say, okay, I can make this adjust artfully, gracefully, with integrity.
And I love that you say, this ain't my first rodeo when talking about experienced leaders. But what's one surprising way that a leader can approach a challenge with fresh eyes, because they tend to fall into their old bad habits?
I'll just ask them, have you talked to so-and-so, the people that they respect? I encourage them to engage the fresh eyes of the people they respect around them, knowing that, no, you're not going to do it just because someone suggested that, but you will get in. Are you open to other ideas? So part of what I am doing when I am working with a client is finding out, I'm testing their openness to new ideas, to fresh eyes with my own insights, my own experience as a leader. And if I'm sensing pushback or resistance to being open to new ways, I'll say, Charles, I'm wondering right now if the resistance I'm feeling is what the people around you feel when you ask them for their ideas. And if your first response is why it won't work, you're not going to get any fresh ideas.
Absolutely. And I love how when thought leaders have come from a different background, because it offers new insights. If leadership were a rodeo event, which one would it be and why?
Well, it would definitely be what we call in the rodeo business a rough stock event. So you've got rough stock are the bulls and the broncs, two different kinds of bronc riding, bareback riding and saddle bronc riding. And then you've got the timed events, the steer wrestling, the calf roping, the team roping. But it would be a rough stock event because I think the world of leadership is rough. And in a lighthearted way, leaders got to deal with a lot of bull.
I agree with you because, and I would say that leadership really resembles bull riding because it requires courage, balance, and the ability, like you said before, to adapt quickly to unpredictable situations.
Yeah, and I think if I could add to that, that everything is far more technical than it looks. Take leadership. Well, that if you're an outgoing person, you should be a good leader. Oh, talk to any good leader. There are so many things under the microscope that you got to do. Same with bull riding. It just looks like you make a face like you're in pain and hang on for 8 seconds. But technically, there's so much to it. There are so many little things that the average person would never know or to look for, just like with a leader navigating a difficult conversation, holding somebody accountable while maintaining their dignity and their feeling of self-worth and knowing just how far you can press something like that. I think that's all part of some of the unwritten, sometimes obscure parts of leadership.
Well, like what you said before, too, it's that you need to be in partnership with your employees, like a cowboy is with the bull, because if you're fighting against the bull, you're probably going to get bucked off fairly quickly. You have to feel where he or she is moving and make sure that you're moving in that same direction together. And that's the same way with leaders, as being in sync with their employees, kind of knowing the direction of the industry, looking around corners to see what's coming next so you're not surprised. But that partnership is so critical and viewing it that way instead of an adversarial relationship.
In a war between you and the bull's going to win. I mean, he's 2,000 pounds. He's bigger, stronger, faster, meaner, all of that. So I want to work with him. And even though he wants to buck me off, I still want to make sure that he bucks to the best of his ability because that's how I will score a lot of points. And I want him to buck well, but I also want to make sure that I'm in sync with him, that is a partnership that we are, in some ways you could say, dancing together. When the buzzer blows, I want to be in the middle of his back.
Well, drawing such analogies provide great insights into effective leadership practices. What is the worst leadership advice you've ever heard from maybe a leader so that we can hopefully dispel that during our conversation today so leaders no longer try to be served by that advice?
Well, I think there's a couple of them. There's two things that I have heard over time, Charles, that I think are bad advice. Number one is don't get too close to your people. I understand what they mean by that. You can't be so emotionally involved that you won't make a tough call. But truly, if I love you, if I want the best for you, I'm gonna bring the heat. I'm gonna do everything I can to sharpen your iron. I want you challenged by me. I think one of the highest compliments any leader could pay of any direct report is they make me a better leader. They challenge me as much as they support me.
Avoiding poor advice leads us to consider more impactful leadership practices. What is a small leadership habit that you've seen has a massive impact?
I think one of the most important habits to have is asking people for feedback. And now, as I said earlier, there's a lot of reasons people may not give you the whole truth right in the beginning. But over time, if they see how you handle it, especially if you begin to use some of the feedback they give you, whoa, that just increases the likelihood that people are going to do it more. And if you just say thank you, to seek feedback and just say thank you, no matter what you get for an answer, people go, that's not, oh, I trust what he'll do with that. In fact, I see him or her getting better with the feedback I gave them. Wow, they listen to me. That's motivating to people.
What is the biggest shift in leadership you see coming in the next, say, 5 years, and how can leaders prepare for it now?
Well, I'm just making my way into that right now with AI. I think it is game changing. Even in leadership development, we're going to be using AI all the time, even more. Marshall uses it now, right? So I think one of the things we can do is just start playing with it a little bit, get familiar with it, not to be comfortable, not to be knowledgeable of what you can do with AI would be like ignoring the internet.
I would agree. And I've seen shifts where increasing the importance of adaptability is important and emotional intelligence as well. Leaders need to prepare by fostering right this growth mindset to embrace technology, AI, and really embrace continuous learning. Because as leadership continues to evolve, focusing on certain key takeaways can help leaders stay ahead.
Well said. Yeah. And again, I think that we just got to start practicing with it because AI isn't going away, and it will affect the work of leadership development in untold ways.
So if I were a leader and and I'm looking for some insight into my leadership growth, and I know all the best practices in leadership, but I want to look at other areas to gain a new perspective, maybe a mindset shift. What would you encourage me to watch in the rodeo arena if I were to go to a rodeo or watch it on TV to say, watch these things, and that's going to give you a fresh perspective or some additional insight that you're not going to see in a management textbook?
Well, it's because some of my clients have never seen a rodeo, so I will often tell them just watch for it, and then I will ask them, "What did you notice about how a cowboy, a rider prepared for his ride? Any little certain things?" And we'll kind of debrief that. And sometimes it prompts me to point out something like, "Oh, there's a reason he did that. That was very intentional. That wasn't just superstitious. That had a very deliberate function. And here's why he did that."
When you say you bet the ranch on results, so what is your personal leadership mantra that you live by every day?
Get better. I mean, I hope so periodically I will ask my clients as a coach, what can I do to be a better coach for you, Charles, or you, whoever? And that's why I like to give them my short list of the behaviors that they can expect from me. But usually at the very beginning of an engagement, I'll say, Charles, what do you expect of a coach? And sometimes they will have had a coach or they don't and never had a coach, whatever the case. And they'll just tell me what their expectations are. I make note of those. And I try to keep the wording the same so that sometimes it'll match what I already have written down. But then I like to compare myself based on what you expected of me. How am I doing? Should I do that more or less? I want to model getting better because ultimately that's what you have hired me to do. Get better as a leader. I want to model on how to do that. And that starts with me. So to help anybody develop, as Marshall said, start with yourself.
I love that. And some of the things that you said throughout our conversation, too, that I think are worthwhile to repeat is lead with integrity, be that humble leader, listen more than you speak, and always be willing to do the hard work yourself before expecting it from others. I think those are good mantras or good things to follow if you want to really elevate your leadership brand.
Yes, I love the word integrity. It's just, there's so much to be said about it. In fact, it is rated. Kouzes and Posner did a study on this, the Leadership Challenge, where they found that cross industry situations, no matter the level, integrity is the number one quality of a leader. If you got it, people will go to great lengths to support you, even if they don't agree with you. But if you don't have it, it's really tough to win over people.
Last question. You've coached some of the best in the world. If you could go back and coach your younger self, what is one leadership lesson you would give yourself?
The heart of your question is what advice or feed forward would I give myself or would I coach myself on? A habit to develop would be truly seeking feedback more frequently on me, asking others for their suggestions, how I can be better. I don't think I did that enough early on, and I still struggle with that. And I'll say this, in most cases, the people I am coaching are men. Not all, but most of them have been men. And I tell them, your spouse is the most untapped natural resource you have. First of all, they're not afraid to tell you what they think. And often, and I learned this from Marshall, I always talk to the spouses of my clients. I don't incorporate their feedback in the 360 report that I do. And what I find out is the way they are at work is usually the way they are at home. And my clients will say, oh, my wife tells me that all the time. I said, well, she's right. She's not afraid to tell you that. But people at work don't tell you that because there's obstacles to telling you that. You're the boss. You're the CEO. No wonder they're not going to tell you that. But your wife, they're not afraid of you. They'll tell you the truth. And you remember that classic line from that 1990s movie with Jack Nicholson and Tom, you can't handle the truth. I think most leaders can handle the truth. They want the truth, but it's hard to get.
That's some great insight to end on, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
McCartneycoaching.com is my website. It is not your typical website. You probably have seen it. There's a whole rodeo Western theme to it, but McCartneycoaching.com, or drop me just a line at Mike@McCartney Love to connect.
I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.